A poor young man stood in the middle of the market looking for work but couldn't find any. He sat down, confused, wondering what to do next. As he was sitting amidst the crowd, people suddenly started running in all directions. The young man looked around, not knowing what was happening. Then he saw a wealthy man approaching from afar, riding a horse-drawn carriage. The man stopped in front of him and asked, "What are you doing here?" The young man replied, "I came to the market this morning to look for work, but I couldn't find any, so here I am, lost in thought." The man said, "How about working for me? I have a good opportunity for you." The young man responded happily, "With pleasure." The man said, "Then get on the carriage and let's go." The young man asked, "Where are we going?" The man replied, "You'll know when we arrive." The young man got on the carriage and went with the man. While they were traveling, he asked, "Why did the people run away from the market when you arrived?" The man answered, "It's an old story. I'll tell you later." They continued their journey until they reached a place in the middle of the desert, where there stood a grand palace with golden pillars. The man said to the young man, "Please come in." The young man entered the palace, and the man ordered the servants to prepare food. After the chefs finished cooking and set the food on the table, the man and the young man sat down to eat. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appeared and joined them at the table. The young man looked at the man and asked, "Who is this girl?" The man replied, "She's my only daughter. We live alone in this big palace." The young man looked at the girl and noticed she seemed sad, though he didn't know why. As they ate, the girl kept glancing at the young man with looks of admiration and concern, as if she knew something. After finishing the meal, the man pointed to a room in the palace and said to the young man, "Go to that room and rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll go to work." After the young man went to the room, the girl came to him and gave him a gift. The gift consisted of 2 stones, one gold and the other silver. She said, "Whenever you're in trouble, strike these stones together." Before leaving, the young man asked her, "I noticed you looked sad while we were eating. Can you tell me why?" She replied, "It's nothing," then left. The young man rested. The next morning, the man woke him up and said, "It's time to work. Let's go." They traveled until they reached a high mountain. The man stopped and brought out a bottle of water. He poured some into a cup and gave it to the young man to drink. Unbeknownst to the young man had put a sleeping potion in the water. After drinking, the young man quickly lost his balance and passed out. A group of eagles appeared, circling him, and carried him to the top of the mountain. Just as they were about to devour him, the young man regained consciousness and fought them off. He shouted, "Where am I? And how did I get here?" The man called out from below, "You're on top of the gold mountain. To get down, you must first extract the gold." The young man began mining the gold and throwing it down the mountain, while the man loaded it into carts. Once the carts were full, the man laughed and said, "Thank you, you fool. You've extracted more gold than I needed." The young man asked, "How do I get down from the mountain?" The man laughed again and said, "There have been 49 young men before you, and with you, the count is now 50. Then he left, abandoning the young man to face his fate. The poor young man thought to himself, "What should I do? Climbing down is impossible, and staying here means death by hunger or thirst." After a moment of thought, he remembered the stones the girl had given him. He took them out, struck them together, and a giant genie appeared. The genie said, "Ask for whatever you want." Trembling with fear, the young man said, "I want to get down from this mountain." The genie granted his wish instantly. When the young man reached the ground, he couldn't believe he had survived. He wandered through the desert, searching for the man's palace, determined to confront him. Along the way, he met an old man who seemed familiar with the desert. The young man asked him about the palace, but the old man warned him, "That man is evil and shows no mercy for his own gain. I advise you not to go back." But the young man insisted, saying, "I must go and take back what's rightfully mine." The old man said, If you're determined, be careful. When the young man reached the palace, he hid nearby and waited. Soon, the man left in his carriage. The young man cautiously entered the palace and found only the girl inside. When she saw him, she said, "I knew you'd survive." He replied, "I survived by God's grace and your help. If it weren't for those stones, I would have met the same fate as those before me." He then asked, "But I noticed you looked unhappy when I first came here. Are you not content with what your father does?" She replied, "This man is not my father, he's my husband." The young man was shocked and asked, "How can that be? You're young and beautiful, and he's old." She told him her story. 2 years ago, I lived with my brother and father. After my father died, life became difficult. My brother, who had just become a young man, went to the market every day to look for work while I accompanied him. One day, as we stood in the market, people began running in all directions. Suddenly, this man appeared in his carriage and offered my brother a job. My brother insisted I come along, so we both rode with him to this palace. That night after dinner, he told us to rest. The next morning, he took my brother to work, leaving me behind. Later, he returned with carts full of gold, but without my brother. When I asked about him, the man claimed my brother had fallen off the mountain. I cried bitterly over my brother's loss. The man then proposed marriage, claiming I had no one else to care for me. Out of desperation, I accepted. She continued. Over time, I noticed strange things about him. Every so often, he'd bring a young man to work with him, but none ever returned. He always told others I was his daughter, not his wife, to avoid suspicion. One night, I overheard him confessing his crimes while drunk. That's when I realized my brother was one of his victims. I began living in fear. When you arrived, I remembered my brother and decided to help you escape the same fate. After hearing her story, the young man introduced himself. My name is Shujaa, which means brave. I won't leave until I free you from him. They waited until the man returned with another young victim. Shujaa hid while the man repeated his scheme. The next morning, as the man prepared to leave with the new victim, Shujaa secretly held onto the back of the carriage. When they reached the mountain, Shujaa hid behind a large rock and watched as the man drugged the young man's drink. At the right moment, Shujaa imitated the sound of a wolf, distracting them. He then switched the cups, causing the man to drink the drugged water instead. As the man fell unconscious, a group of eagles carried him to the top of the mountain. Shujaa approached the young man and told him everything. Together, they forced the man to mine gold to fill the carts. Once the carts were full, Shujaa mocked the man, saying, "Thank you, you fool. You've given me more gold than I need." The man begged for mercy, but Shujaa left him to face the same fate he had inflicted on others. Shujaa and the young man returned to the palace, where Shujaa gave the young man enough gold to start a new life. He then freed the girl, married her, and discovered a hidden room filled with even more gold. They loaded the cart with gold, went to the village market, and distributed it among the poor and needy. Finally, Shujaa and his wife settled in the palace, opening its doors to anyone in need. Their story became legendary, passed down through generations.